Jimmy, when you first started out, and that's many, many years ago, did you see yourself as a songwriter or as a musician?
I was the piano player in my father's Baptist church, so uh, that's from about age 6. I was in kind of church music with my family, and I think I didn't think much about show business because my father was very much against rock and roll, and but secretly I would write little songs, and there came a time when I was 12 or 14 years old when I heard my very first Glen Campbell record, which was a song called "Turn Around, Look at Me."
Right.
And after I heard that record, I said that's what I want to do. I want to write songs for someone like him.
Wow. And you really made that happen.
Well, the odds against that happening were astronomical, to say the least. I mean, here I was a farm kid. I was driving a tractor in the panhandle of Oklahoma when I got this big idea that I was going to be a songwriter. So I was light years from Hollywood and from Glen Campbell at that time, but amazingly enough, it worked out.
How incredible. So many of the biggest names in show business and in music have started off from churches. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's our first exposure, a lot of us, to singing and playing and choral singing
Uh-huh.
in choirs, singing in the congregation. And I also think it's an emotional peak. I think that in the religious services there's this tide of emotion that sometimes really overwhelms one. And I suppose that depends on how religious you are, but the service, in the case of the Christian faith, the crucifixion of Christ and all that, that's very emotional territory. And I think that emotions and music are really very, very closely linked. So as your emotional being flowers, so does if you're a musical person, so does your music.
Yeah. So you learnt to put all of that emotion into your own music and create your own songs.
Well, I did. I started writing them when I was about 13 years old. I wrote a song called It's Someone Else. And eventually in 1973, Artie Garfunkel recorded It's Someone Else. And I couldn't believe it when he recorded it. And I had him put 1959 or 1958 or whatever. I think it was 1958.
Yeah.
I had him put that on the record in parentheses because I wanted people to know that it was a very early song.
I mean, you most of your no, would you say your best work came at a tender age?
Not really. I think that my quickest work came in my, like 20s, early 20s. Probably between 16 and 20, I was writing 3 or 4 songs a week. I was
Really?
very quick. I go back now and I see false rhymes and I see all sorts of things that kind of upset me because I never really stopped working on a song. And mentally, I'm always trying to improve it. But no, I think that I would be a fool to say I haven't gotten better with age, because I think that my best songwriting is on my albums, and a lot of those songs have been covered. Highwayman and The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, and I mean, I feel that my best writing has been from the mid to late 70s and up to this day.
Yeah,
Up to
yeah,
this day.
and you certainly continue with it. Yet, so many of those early hits were just worldwide smashes. you don't think that they were so good. What do you attribute their success to?
Oh, I don't know. I'm saying that in my personal world, they're not. I don't think of
They're
them as
your
the best.
best. I understand.
I mean, I think they were competitive with the competition. You know, like I'm in the '60s. You know, I was hot on the heels of Bacharach and David. They were like idols of mine. Lennon and McCartney. Once I got, you know, in the vernacular, once I got hip to the Beatles, I was all over them and absorbing as much as I could from them. And Bob Dylan, he had a big influence on me. And also the golden age of the American songbook, um, Cole Porter, Johnny Mercer, Yip Harburg, Rodgers and Hart, all of the classic American songwriter types.
Yeah.
I was very much into the history of music, all the way back to Tin Pan Alley.
Right.
And I was always open to all different kinds of music. So I absorbed a lot of. I never allowed myself to be pigeonholed as a country songwriter or you know, I wrote for Frank Sinatra. So am I writing standards? You know, am I a Vegas guy? I shied away from that kind of thing. I just tried to be a free agent, and I sort of I continue to try to create a completely open and interchangeable musical atmosphere around myself.
Right. So you adapted your writing to suit the person that you were writing for.
Well, you know, I used to write for people. I wrote for people when I was working for publishers. I've done it. I was never particularly good at it. I had a Christmas song on a Supremes album once, and my very, very first song was with Motown. I mean, my first job was with Motown. And I wrote a Christmas song for them it lodged on one of their Christmas albums. I haven't been particularly great at writing songs for other people, but I've been consistent in turning out, I think, quality. And the artists come along, they hear something, a lot of times on one of my albums, my solo albums, the artist will cover, like Judy Collins covered The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, and it became a standard here.
Yeah.
And Waylon Jennings, Chris Christopherson, Johnny Cash, and Willie Nelson covered Highwayman off of an album that I made with George Martin called El Mirage. And so that's the part of my career that people aren't as familiar with, but I've been consistent over the years in getting recordings of my new song.
How did that feel for you that other artists had more success with your material than you had singing it?
I didn't think of myself as a singer particularly until it was sort of imposed on me. Carole King's album Tapestry, which was produced by Lou Adler in Hollywood, during my tenure there, I was right in that scene. I was in the studios where they made that album, and I knew Lou very well, and of course I knew her, and I knew who she was from early days. And Tapestry was such a phenomenal hit, and this wave of singer-songwriters came along, and I adapted. I realized that if I stayed in a pure songwriter pool, traditionally there had always been songwriters in a pool and singers in a pool, and now all of a sudden that was being commingled. And it was a very beautiful financial model because you could carry your show in your guitar case. You didn't need a band. You didn't know. You buy one air ticket and you can do a tour.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing now, by the way. But I felt like I needed to adapt to the singer-songwriter phenomenon. And even though my voice wasn't my strongest asset, I worked on it. I developed it. It's come along through the years. I'm very, very proud of the way I sung on several albums that I made.
Yeah.
But I don't consider myself a singer. If you want to compare me to Glen Campbell or Mr. Sinatra or to Barbara Streisand or Billy Davis of the Fifth Dimension, so these singers were great singers.
Right.
I mean, they were singers first and last. They were singers.
Yeah.
So no, I've never. Joni Mitchell once said that we used to have singers and we used to have songwriters. Now we have singer-songwriters, and they do a half-assed job of singing and a half-assed job of writing. So
it sums it up.
I think there's a certain amount of truth in that.
Yeah. Jimmy Webb, when you were writing those hits, and actually, can you tell us the story of how you got together with Glen Campbell and he got to sing all of those amazing songs you wrote?
Well, as I said, I was working at Motown, and my tenure came to an end there. And the guy who hired me at Motown was Mark Gordon, and he was amicably let go there. There was a parting of the ways. And he went over to Johnny Rivers' music. Johnny Rivers was a big pop star here. Uh-huh. He was the Entertainer of the Year 4 years in a row, and this was at the very peak of his popularity. I went over to his publishing company as a contract writer, making $100 a week. He also bought me a Camaro, which was pretty cool. But struggling along and working with this at Johnny Rivers Music, working with this group, the Fifth Dimension. And at the time, Johnny had cut an album called Rewind. And on that album, he had cut one of my songs called By the Time I Get to Phoenix. And when I left Motown, they said, take this song. Take By the Time I Get to Phoenix. Take Up and Away. Take Galveston. We don't like that. These songs, none of these songs are good for us. And they gave me a whole portfolio of songs to take with me. One of them was By the Time I Get to Phoenix. So Johnny cut it on his album, and at the same time remembered his old friend Glen Campbell from days at Mercury Records, right. When they had cut an album together. And he had always followed Glen's career and felt like Glen just needed the right song. And so amazingly enough, he called Glen over to his office to hear Johnny's test pressing of Rewind, and on that album, the cut, By the Time I Get to Phoenix. And Glen sat there and listened to it, and he said to Johnny, he said, I don't get it. He said, why are you giving me this song? And at the time, Johnny had written a #1 record called Poor Side of Town that was on that album. Huh. And he said to Glen, you can only have one #1 record at a time. And smiled, and he was actually really, it was an act of kindness towards me as a writer. He knew that Glen would have a hit record with that song, and he made that move on my behalf. And so I've always been grateful to Johnny for that. And sure enough,
it was huge.
By the Time I Get to Phoenix took off, and I mean, without the help of people like that, the Mark Gordons and the Johnny Rivers and the people who made the wheels go around for me, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd probably be a music director at a Baptist church somewhere in the Midwest.
You probably would have enjoyed it nonetheless.
Well, I enjoy music. I don't think that, I don't think that my life would have been wasted as long as I would have been in music.
Yeah.
But I've been, very, very lucky to have had a kind of a dazzling look at life. And I've enjoyed it. I've written about it, in my memoir, The Cake and the Rain. I talk about some of the encounters that I've had with huge celebrity, and the role of the songwriter is kind of a background piece, sort of a lot of times, the big stars, they forget you're in the room. So they do things that they wouldn't do if they remembered that you were there. But
like what?
Well, I don't. You'll have you need.
I have to read the book.
Yeah.
It's called The Cake and the Rain, and of course they're the words from that hugely successful song MacArthur Park. So, what were you talking about in MacArthur Park? How did that one happen?
Well, I was talking about MacArthur Park. Exactly. I mean, everything that is in MacArthur Park, I witnessed, I saw. For example, the old men playing checkers by the trees, they were there. And the girl in the yellow cotton dress, she was there. Everything that I talk about was there. So there's no real mystery. People seem to get hung up over the cake out in the rain, but there was a cake and it was left out in the rain.
Really?
Yes. All of the stuff I'm referring to is kind of personal. I mean, it's very, very personal. But it is real, and it came out of this, absolutely, nuclear love affair that I had with my high school sweetheart, Susie Horton.
Oh.
And so a lot of those songs were written for her by the time I got to Phoenix and Wichita. And a lot of those early songs were written about Susie.
And she obviously knows that.
Oh, she knows that. Yes, she knows that. And eventually she, it was very, very rough, but she and I were together for a while, and then it didn't work out. It didn't turn into a long-term relationship, but she and I are friends, and I email her all the time. And,
nice.
In fact, I've been thinking, my wife and I have been thinking about inviting Susan up here to New York for a visit, just to sort of,
chew the fat
with her, and let her know that she's welcome in our lives. And
isn't that lovely?
She was always a very, very nice person, a good lady, and I would like to really have a closer friendship with her.
Very nice. Jimmy Webb, everything that I've written about you says that you really loved writing about down-to-earth characters. All the songs kind of take that point of view and look at the ordinary person on the street and kind of get under their skin. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, that's been said because there's a lot of truth in it. My protagonist in Galveston is a soldier. He's from what was then a small town in Texas. He's not from New York. He's not from Chicago. It's not big city stuff. The Wichita lineman, he's working at after this last hurricane up here, they were saying that there were 25,000 linemen out working on our phones. So there's a lot of guys working in that job, but it's very dangerous. It has an element of heroism about it that I don't know whether people are completely aware of just how life-threatening it can be to be up there, particularly in these storms and whatever.
Of course, but what inspired you to write about these ordinary folk?
My childhood growing up with ordinary folks.
Right, good answer.
My immediate surroundings, my father, my grandfather who was a farmer, my background in agricultural labor.
Nice. So you've given voice to all the things you grew up with.
I think I'm a working class guy, basically, who kind of got lucky. Um, I went to Hollywood at the right time, uh, but I don't think I ever my feet ever completely left the ground. Um, and I still like those characters. If you look at my current work, or you look at some of the songs that I've written for Artie Garfunkel, all I know, I love you, and that's all I know. He's not a brilliant, he's not a rocket scientist, but he knows that he loves this girl. So, I mean, there is a theme there. If you look through the material, and if you're familiar with, because it's kind of a, you know, it could be said it's kind of a large catalog.
Kind of large is an understatement.
But I mean, there's a unifying theme, and I think that's it. That's the unifying.
Yeah, yeah. Of all the amazing work that you've done, is there one single song that stands out to you or that's closest to your heart?
Probably not the ones that have been most famous, even though I'm very, very fond of Wichita Lineman, and it's probably been my most successful song. It's in the National Archive here. It's in a nuclear-proof bunker. It's underground, and I think that's, you know, I guess that might be my one of my favorites. But the ones that I really like, are the least well-known ones. I'm sorry to say that, but
no, don't be sorry at all. But
I think that there's more workmanship and really just more craft in some of the later songs that are sort of, for better or worse, ensconced on my solo albums.
Can you give us an example?
The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, Highwayman. Wrote a song for Artie called Skywriter. You could listen to that, and that's about as good as I can. That's about as good as I can write. I can't write any better than Skywriter.
Great. We'll take a listen to Skywriter now.
Good.
You're about to do a live stream, Jimmy. What's prompted you to do this?
Well, you know, the obvious things, really, it's the fact that we haven't been in our country, we haven't been able to work for about longer than 18 months. So my touring schedule was you know, quite ambitious, and that was just, you know, brought to a kind of catastrophic end.
Yeah.
I remember that one thing that I had said to my wife after I came off the road a year ago last March. I came off the road and I said to her, I think this COVID thing's getting out of hand. And I said, I think we maybe should think about canceling some engagements. I was booked solid. And she said, well, okay. And while we were talking about that, the phone rang. And my agent told me that cancellations were coming in, and that my English tour was canceled.
Yeah.
And it was like, it just all happened in 24 hours. It was over.
Yeah.
And so this is the first time I've done any streaming at all. But as the pandemic wears on here, I'm looking at other ways to reach out to my fans who really, I played Washington and Philadelphia this last weekend, and we had decent crowds, but they were vaccinated, they were wearing masks, they were distancing, and so you're talking about maybe 150 people, but it's a start, you know, and we're beginning to come back with these safeguards in place.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people here who don't believe in those safeguards. We have people
everywhere
we have people here who think that COVID is a quote hoax
Yeah,
unquote.
we have them
Um,
too.
but I believe I know better than that. I believe that that it's a real disease, and I think that I could catch it. I think that I could catch it around crowds of people, particularly signing autographs
Yeah.
in line where there are lots of people waiting, lots of people crowded into the same room. So those situations, all of us, I'm speaking for all the artists, really, uh, to my knowledge, we're all trying to avoid those type of situations. But streaming, particularly in a place like my father's place, which is an iconic venue on Long Island, um, it really goes back to the 50s and early rock and roll. And so to be able to go into that sort of venue with that kind of street cred and do a streaming show that's going to be seen in Hawaii and
Well,
Australia.
all around the
And
world, that's right.
I have a son and a granddaughter in Australia,
Do you?
Melbourne.
Oh, that's
Yes,
where we are. Oh, you'll have to do a
really?
shout out.
Yeah. Well, okay, kids, here I am. Hi, Bridget. Hello, Christian. Hello, Rachel. So they're anyway. My granddaughter is Gita or Bridget, and she's a doll. She's about 3 years old now.
Gorgeous.
So and I have another one in Austin, Texas, named JoJo. She's 5. So they're what can you say about little girls? I mean,
Yeah.
they're just the best.
I've got one of those too, a little granddaughter here. Oh, well, no wonder we see you in this country so often then, and will continue to do so as soon as COVID allows.
I hope so. The last time I was down, Jimmy Barnes and I worked together, and what a wonderful family and wonderful people they were. They took such good care of me, and we were able to play a couple of really big concerts
Yeah,
together,
yeah.
which I'm not really used to those kind of audiences. So shout out to Jimmy, and thank you for making me a part of your world.